Hello. Hey, everybody. So, I guess are you starting or am I starting? I'm trying to figure out what I think. You want me to start? Me? Okay. I'm going to kick it. Say that again?
You need to turn your mic on, Deb.
Okay, welcome. That was my part. That's all I'm supposed to say. No. Glad that you're here tonight. My name is Debbie Collins, and I am with the Women's Ministry team here at Central. And this is our first Generation to Generation event, and so we're really excited about it. I hope you came with an expectant heart because we have a wonderful evening planned for tonight. And tonight you'll be hearing from Dr. Fuller, and she'll come up later and speak. And then we have this great panel of ladies of great faith behind me that will share their wisdom and inspiration and advice that they have been given over the many years. And so we're really excited for them to be here and be a part of our event. And also, when you came in, and if you didn't know, the table, there's two tables out there. There is the snack table, which you are welcome to snacks at any point in time if you want to slip out and get anything. And water is on the table if you need a drink of water. Also, there's an information table at the front door. And if you did not pick up one of these, be sure and pick this up. This has events that are on that are upcoming for 2021 for our women's ministry at this point in time. And so Bible studies, and we have meet and greets, and we're going to have a sister connection, sister to sister connection, if I can do that right. So we have that. Plus, on the back is a sheet in which we would like to have your suggestions, things that you'd like to see happen with the women's ministry here at the church, Bible studies that you'd like to be a part of. Maybe there's an event that you'd like to do, like painting or any kind of craft things. We are open to these. So we're open to suggestions, and we want to hear from you. So if you want to fill that out, and you can drop it in the box on that back table as you leave tonight, that would be great. So the other reason I am to be up here is I'm supposed to share with you a verse that has meant something to me over in my life. I've depended on this promise of God for the past 30 years, and it was in Galatians 6:9, and it's so let us not grow weary in well-doing, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. As I thought of tonight and the generation to generation theme, and I thought how we go through many different seasons of our life, and some are good, some are really difficult and hard to bear, so we can't get through some of those. So I was thinking about that, but you know what? Sometimes we just have to make it through a lot of stuff just to get to those good times. And it gets difficult, and life is hard. Life is just really hard. And so we do get weary physically and tired, and we just can't, sometimes we think we can't go on. But I read that being tired is a physical affliction, whereas being weary is a spiritual attitude that we have, that sometimes we blame God that we're going through these times, and we just need to look at our circumstances and just thank God for those. And so as I was sharing or thinking of this verse, I have just depended on it so much over the past 30 years. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be retiring, which I'm so excited because God has brought me through. And if it wasn't for that verse that I read that I had on my desk placard for those 30 years that said, don't give up. You're going to get weary, you're going to get tired, but never give up. You've got a lot ahead of you. And so it was hard. And I'd ask myself, how did I make it through those 30 years? And at that time, when I first got that job 30 years ago, I had just gone through a divorce unexpectedly. I was there to raise 3 children. And then I had a sick mom that came to live with me for the next 7 years. And so I was always very tired and very weary. But I knew I couldn't give up. And so God gave me that promise. He says, in that due season, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to give you because you're not going to give up. And so I held on to it. I held on to his promise and my salvation. I held on because of my church family who was there to support me, my children, my friends. So many days I would come home very fatigued from working the 40 hours or taking care of the kids. And I just didn't know if I could take it until I would drive to work the next day. And in the morning when I would leave my house, it was dark, always, every day, at 5 and 6 o'clock. I used to see the sunrise, and God would always remind me through that blessing of his sunrise and his beauty that I was reaping the blessings all along, but I just didn't know it. So life will feel very tired, and we'll become very fatigued during the seasons of our life and the generations. But God promises that he will satisfy our weary soul and that he will carry us through these seasons, and he will bless us beyond measure. So don't give up on God because of his promise. So let us not grow weary in doing good, but in due season we will reap if we do not give up.
Amen. That was awesome. Yeah, we're getting ready to just sing a song here together, hearing about what this was about, generation to generation. This song was on my heart. I know I pray this song over my children specifically, and I hope you guys can see that the same way. This song is like a big prayer. I have a lot of family I pray for every day that need to know the Lord, and that's my biggest prayer for my children, is to know the Lord and not turn their back on him. And so that's our prayer for tonight, and I'm excited about this generation to generation and what we can learn from each other. So let's sing.
Children, may his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family and your children and their children and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family and your children and their children and their children. In the May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May your favor be upon us for 1,000 generations, and our families, and our children, and their children, and their children.
Dear Lord, we just love you so much. Thank you for this time together. Thank you for these women. I just ask that we can learn so much from each other tonight. You have all of us here for a reason. I do believe that. And I ask that you will speak the words you want and use us. God, we do pray that over our families and our children for generation and generation and generation. God, we just come to you and ask you, please, God, please help us raise up our children and grandchildren for warriors for you, for the cause of Christ. We love you, Jesus. We praise you in your powerful name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Caitlin. We're so glad you're here tonight. And I was just sitting there. I've been watching on my phone all the people who are joining us in Facebook land. We're so glad you're out there. You can type in a question anytime, because I know as we have my friend Cynde Fuller is going to speak in just a minute. You'll probably have some questions come up. And also just during the panel discussion, any kind of question you have, just type it and I will try to get to it. I'll scroll through. I'm Deborah Stevens. I am the children's director here at Central. And that's what we're talking about today is children and raising them, trying to raise them right, trying not to lose our minds. I think I have a little bit left. I don't know. I'm not sure. But right now, I would like to introduce one of my best friends ever, Cynde Fuller. She is the Lucy to my Ethel. We have many stories and we know too much about each other, so we have sworn each other to secrecy. So I would like to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Yes, and we are definitely Lucy and Ethel. That is absolutely for sure. I am a pediatrician, and I have a developmental pediatric practice here in Owasso. I did general pediatrics for many years, and now I just take care of children with developmental disabilities. Some of them aren't so unusual as you would think. Children with ADHD, children with autism are a lot of my patients, and so I was asked to speak about how to support our children through the pandemic. And I expect that I will receive more statements that assist in that from you all than you will from me, because it's been a year, and we've been doing this for a year. We don't know what the future's going to look like. God's the only one that knows that, what it's going to look like 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. Are we going to be getting annual COVID vaccines with our flu shots? And the most important thing, am I ever going to eat at another pizza buffet? Because I don't get thin crust unless I go to the pizza buffet, because nobody in my family likes thin crust. So, you know, we mamas, we suck it up and we eat the thick old nasty crust, when really what we want is that thin crust pepperoni. And so that's very important to me. If I'm able to eat at a pizza buffet, I can die a happy woman. Yeah. And so I've been blessed to be able to work actually from my home for most of this time. I've been in and out of my office, but mostly out. And so my patient population, this worked very well for me. If I needed to look in little people's ears, it wouldn't be nearly so easy. I will be out of my office until May because it flooded. I'm really ready to go back. I want to go back, but it flooded. So, you know, when we're looking at the pandemic, it's been a time of loss for everyone. There are some people who feel like they've, you know, escaped relatively unscathed, but we've all lost things. We've lost loved ones. We've lost our jobs. We've lost the ability to provide for our children. And when we acknowledge this loss, it really helps us to be able to support the children, and because we understand that they've experienced losses too. In fact, I heard this on the news, so you know it's got to be true. However, I think you'll agree with this stat, that 1 in 4 children in Oklahoma are food insecure. And I cannot get my head around that. I can't. It's got, it's true. I can't get my head around 1 in 4, 25% of those babies are food insecure. And I have recently come to know an individual who grew up food insecure in a very close way. And over time, I've been able to see him develop, and I've been able to watch and see the things that God is doing through his life already that he just has no idea. And I think that is one of the most quality individuals I've ever known in my life, and he grew up food insecure. When he graduated high school, he didn't have a place to live. So he lives with me. But, we've all had losses from this, but the kids have lost some really unique things. We have mostly, as adults, been able to not lose control of our situations. Now, many people have. Many people worked in the food service industry. Many people worked in the hospitality industry. All of those industries have been impacted tremendously. And those people often lost their jobs and, again, their ability to provide for their families. Children have lost their routine, the structure of their day. And while many children attempted to attend school in person, my patient population was probably half and half virtual, half in person. And even the children that were attending in person frequently had to do what is terrifying for any parent to hear, and that is distance learning. The fact that you guys made it through this with your kids is amazing to me, and I'm very much, overwhelmed at how you were able to keep your home structured, keep your job going, and still help educate your children. That's not what you signed up for. And the teachers didn't sign up for this pandemic, and so, again, everybody has had a loss. In losing their structure, my patient population happens to be very, very vulnerable to change. And what I've heard from the patients' parents have been things such as the children aren't able to go to sleep well. They've lost their sleep hygiene. They no longer do those activities in such a routine every night before they go to bed, and it's the way that they're prompted to become sleepy every night. So it's hard when you've lost your sleep hygiene. It's hard when you've lost your routine to go to sleep at night. A lot of my patients who had the flexibility to attend school either virtually or their school wasn't very, I don't want to say particular about the times that they did their work. There are some schools out there, I believe Wasso was one of them, that the children were online the same times each day, really helped preserve their routine. These families didn't have as much trouble with it, honestly. But many times, from 6th grade on, they would stay up really late at night and sleep during the day and try to get their work crammed in sometime in the afternoon. And this is not a good way for you to live long term. When you get your sleep cycle off like that, you don't feel as well. Your immune system goes down. This was not what we needed at this time. And so, that disruption causes disruption really for the whole family when you've got someone sleeping all day and being awake all night. And they lost their activities. Especially after elementary school, kids have their activities, the things that make them uniquely them, whether they like the arts, whether they like sports, whether they participate in scouts, whatever they do, they're kind of defined by their activities. They define themselves by their activities. And no activities have been normal. My son-in-law is a band teacher. My daughter's a band teacher. And this year was not normal. They had band. They even had marching band. I'm not sure how they did that with 6 feet apart. I don't think that was done, but I don't know how you do that. And they're blowing air through a horn. That's not hygienic. But anyway, they had it. It was wrong. It was wrong. It was wrong. It wasn't like normal. They didn't get to go to contests. The kids would all say, it wasn't fun. We didn't get to go on our trips. It wasn't really as much fun. We didn't get to have our concerts. And nothing has been typical. So they've lost out on the social activities, but they've also lost out on opportunities to socialize, and those are two different things. My patient population, there are many children that I care for who have autism that socializing isn't their best thing. They might be really great at math, but socializing is not their best thing. I've had many, I guess probably adolescents that have told me over this past year, hey, this has been the best school year I've ever had because I don't have to deal with people. That's the kid that needs to deal with people. Now, I'm proud of them that their grades are up. I'm pleased that they've had a nice, peaceful year, but that is the child who is most critically needs that social interaction to learn the coping skills, to be able to deal with other people, to learn to let things go when something offensive is said to them. They need that more than anybody else. Maybe they need the practice because it's not their best thing. So they've lost out on this too. And I have heard some really great stories of how families in my practice have kind of pulled together and become closer during this time. There have definitely been some silver lining moments. My family, at the start of the pandemic, I have a daughter who's 26 and married, and then a 21-year-old. And there were 6 of us adults in the house at the beginning of the pandemic. We were finishing working on a house for my daughter and son-in-law. And so they hadn't moved yet. So all of us were there, 3 meals a day, 6 adults. And my grocery bill, oh my gosh. See, I have little old tiny girls. I've got boys and men to feed now, and it was very different, so that was unique. We ate every meal together, and that was really refreshing. It was very delightful. We had a lot of fun eating our meals together, and we had family activities. Previously, even though we were all 6 in one house for a while, we have 6 people, 6 dogs, 4 cats, 3 sugar gliders, and a partridge in a pear tree. I mean, we've got it all at my house. We have 10 horses. Thank God they're not in the house. But we have a menagerie, all due to my youngest daughter. And so, anyway, there were a lot of us there. The girls have always enjoyed movie night, and so that's what we started doing as a family. We would watch movies. I live just a few minutes from here, but the Wi-Fi is so slow we can't stream. So we watched a lot of DVDs, a whole lot of DVDs. And when I have a chance to interview kids from the age of 5 all the way through high school, I'll ask them all one specific question, among a lot of other ones I ask, but I ask them what is their favorite family activity. You would not believe how many children do not have a favorite family activity. And they'll tell me in front of their humiliated parents that we do nothing together. Now, sometimes they haven't really quite been up front with me because the parents will say, we go to the lake every weekend all summer long as a family. And so sometimes it's that, but sometimes literally they don't do anything with their families. And so this has been a time that we've almost been forced into spending time with our family. Another one of the silver linings is we've been together as a family. We've developed activities we enjoy doing together. I've gotten to know my daughter's boyfriend and my son-in-law in a way that I would have never been able to know them before this time. And, even though we've all experienced loss, we've all gained things. And that's definitely one of the silver lining moments that we've had. And I want to do some things after the pandemic, which we hope is soon, that we are doing now. I think it's going to enrich all of our lives. The way to support our children is to enhance their routine, keep their sleep hygiene the same. Those kinds of things are going to help them weather this storm. And I hope we're on the outer edges of that storm, honestly. But there are some things we can keep, some silver linings that we can continue to look at. And one of those is just having family time together. As busy as our lives get, we were all going different directions. There were times that no one was home. There were times that everyone was home before the pandemic. And then there were just the times that everybody was home. And, that was a challenge, but it was really a great challenge. And I don't want to stop doing that. We did something unique in that we have been worshiping together as a group this entire year. That's not necessary in some situations, but my husband and I attend a church that's very rural and nobody wore masks, and it just really wasn't a particularly safe place to attend. So we watch on Facebook every week, but the kids have been coming to us every week with a different sermon that they found online, a different church on Facebook to watch. And so we just take turns choosing. And whoever's turn it is to choose, they have the sermon set out and we all sit and worship together once a week. And it's been really great. And it never would have happened in any other setting. Because we would all be attending our own churches, and yeah, that wouldn't have happened. So, I want to continue that. I think one thing our children need to see from us as parents is that we continue our generosity. During this time, there's been so much loss and so much hunger and so much pain. And even though some people on Facebook have lost their ever-loving mind, we're just going to kind of put that in the background. They've lost their mind. But honestly, I think mostly we've pulled together as a group. We've done things for each other, whether it's my husband he's always finding people that need help. And so there's a lady that lives close to where our office is, doesn't have a car, and we've bought groceries for her a couple of times and brought them to her when the weather was really bad. She walks. And just things like that. We've all found opportunities to serve. We've all found opportunities to help others. That if my life hadn't been slower, we would not have come across this person who needed our help. I see her often walking along the street. I didn't know she wasn't getting exercise. But one night it was very, very cold, and we were there and realized that this was a necessity, that this woman was taking these walks. And so I've been so busy and preoccupied, I had noticed, but I had not noticed her need. And so I want to continue with that. I want to continue those things, the silver linings that we found in the clouds of this pandemic. And I want to ask you all, who has a good story of something that they've done differently with their family that's something that they might want to keep after the pandemic's over? Anybody have a good story? Deborah's going to shove a microphone in your face if you don't volunteer. Well, does anybody have any questions for me?
I have one.
Oh, excellent.
One just came in online. I have one that just came in online. What tools or suggestions do you have for young kids who become aggressive after being on the computer or tablet for more than 15 minutes at a time when you ask them to get off? I think that hits a lot of people during this pandemic.
Oh, yes. Yes. And this is, I think I have an opportunity to have a unique perspective on this, because when I started practicing over 30 years ago, this wasn't a thing. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have anything. And now we are so technology based. And my daughters can't remember anything other than having constant access to me and constant access to each other. They would ask, well, what would happen if you broke down on the street? Well, we would walk to a phone and we would call someone to come get us. But, it's unfathomable to them. They just don't get it. Well, one thing that we were able to do much more effectively prior to the pandemic is control our children's screen time. Some children, this isn't necessary. Some children regulate themselves. My girls are older, and there were not all the wonderful things available that are available now, but we definitely had video games and Nintendos and such things. And they self-regulated, so I just got off easy and looked like a great mom. No, honestly, the girls just regulated themselves. But I have a lot of patients who really enjoy screen time. The types of things they do with their screen time, like playing video games, and it doesn't have to be Tour of Duty or, I don't know, Tour of Duty, okay. Yeah, see, I don't have any of these. But anyway, it doesn't have to be something like that, super aggressive, to really wind them up and hype them up. So there are a couple of things that we need to do to help them. Right now, they're getting much more screen time than we want them to get if they're doing distance learning or anything like that. And so that kind of ching, ching, ching goes up on their screen time, but they still want to be able to enjoy their games and such. So there are a couple of little tips. This question was about a child transitioning from electronics, so from a preferred activity to a non-preferred activity. Very difficult to get them to transition off for dinner, transition off for bedtime. And this is where your sleep hygiene comes in and your routine. The children have a specified amount of screen time. And when that is over, the expectation is that they move on to another task. Man, they'll push the boundaries on this. This is one easier said than done for sure. And, I feel very blessed that I was in the situation that I didn't have to enforce anything for screen time. But it's very important because a lot of little kids actually get triggered by this, I guess, rambunctious, aggressive kind of play that they do on their video games. It really just kind of hypes them up, and they really get overstimulated. And so they're overstimulated, they're mad about a transition, and it's a really difficult behavioral time. You get a lot of just throwdown fits, you get lots of boundary pushing, but just 5 more minutes, We've all heard that. But in these kind of situations, it's just got to be very structured, and you've got to be hardcore. I said 30 minutes. 30 minutes is up. We need to transition. One thing that will make some of these transitions easier is if they occur at least 2 hours before bedtime. We know a lot of studies have shown that screen time in general, but particularly that aggressive play on video games, really hypes them up, and they can't go to sleep. They really kind of can't shut down well after that. There are activities that you can do with a screen that are a little more soothing. Some kids will do like a movie that they've seen over and over, and parents will put that on. If they have a particularly busy mind, sometimes just kind of the monotonous drone of the video will kind of help them go to sleep. It'll give them something to focus on so that their mind isn't quite so busy. But generally, we don't like to have screen time within a couple of hours of bedtime. Not only do you get the blue light in your eyes, which stimulates your pineal gland, which tells you, wake up, it's time to go. But also just the activity itself can be kind of overstimulating. And so the key to this, and it's not a trick because it is hard earned, is to be consistent. You can't let them wear you down. And that is very hard to do when you're already worn down, especially if you know that you can get 30 more minutes of peace if you just say yes. Yes. Oh, I'm not perfect. I have said yes to some things. Evidently, when trying to prepare dinner one night, I told one of my daughters she could run away from home. So her older sister helped her pack, and she packed all the necessities, baby dolls and cookies, and took off. And I had evidently given her permission to do that while I was cooking. I don't remember. But yeah, they can sneak stuff by you like that. But those boundaries are so hard. It's really nice, though, if you can see a kid go from spending a lot of excess time doing video games to, because they're limited in their time, to find some other things to do. Just today, I got to hear a really cool story about a little guy who had tons of screen time. Parents weren't getting along. Unfortunately, the relationship didn't work out. But the child is now in a setting in which the boundaries are firm, and he has picked up some new hobbies. He's playing outside. He's doing things he's never done before because that time is limited, and that time is the same time every day. So, yeah, that can be very helpful. Again, it's not easy. If you get this done, you've done a good thing. Yeah, you've worked. Any other questions?
One more question, and this is aimed at you. I think it almost kind of goes along with what you just talked about. How can we support our friends with kids with autism, the friends who have children who have autism, struggling with the transition from pandemic life back to regular life? How can we support those moms?
Ooh, that's a good one. Yes. And this is the way we can support people in general who have children on the autism spectrum. I get to talk about this a lot in the office because this is a lot of what I do. Certainly there are a lot of different needs that these people have, but especially if we're transitioning back for those kids, one thing that would help is to like form a social bubble with them. And if you've got children their age, have them play together. Set a certain amount of time. It doesn't need to be unlimited. My girls could go and go and go. I didn't have any kind of issues with playing for kids for a long time. Oh, actually, the oldest one kind of did, didn't she? Anyway, but the little one, oh my gosh, she could play forever. But some of these kids get easily overstimulated, and they've had enough, and they need to be alone. And so understanding that and letting the moms know, I understand that this is a bit of a stress for him. Let's play for a while, and when he disengages, then everything's good. And something that's on my radar to do in the future is to offer people some respite. Some families have children with multiple disabilities. I was telling Deborah this morning, the very first mom I talked to, I can't believe she has a hair in her head. She has 4 children, 3 of whom have severe developmental disabilities. And her house burned down about 3 weeks ago. And she's become a single mom this past summer. And now her house is burned down, and her daughter, her only daughter, was on the ventilator for 2 weeks. And these people need our help. They need respite. They need meals brought. They need a safe place for their child to go where their child will be understood. I think the biggest thing is just, to the best of our ability, try to understand from the kid's point of view. The embarrassing things that parents tell me is they're embarrassed to be in a public setting in which their children are judged, or they are judged on their parenting abilities based on their child's behavior. Hey, that's not fair. That's not fair, folks. Most of the time, those children are doing the best they can. And sometimes the best they can doesn't look very good. And they need our support and our love and concern, but they don't necessarily need our advice. If we haven't walked a mile in their moccasins, they don't necessarily need us to tell them how to do it. They just need to know that our love for them is unconditional, our love for their child is unconditional, that we don't judge their situation based on their child's behavior.
Thanks a lot. Miss Landa, do you have that mic on? Just checking. I'm watching for questions to come in. Do we have any questions from our audience here? For all of our moms and grandmoms on stage? Because I have a few lined up here. We were talking about dealing with quarantine, distance learning, pandemic. I was thinking about some times in the past that my parents had to deal with me. Because I remember whenever I was little, the Cold War and everything that came along with that in the news, that was scary. We had bomb shelters, bomb drills, even living in Oklahoma and dealing with tornadoes. Our phones are constantly, this time of year with tornadoes. I remember watching Bill Pitcock on Channel 6. This is forever ago. Somebody out there is going, oh yeah. Somebody old out there is going, oh yeah. And asking my parents about the Vietnam War and was that going to happen here, and just the anxiety that comes through that. Do any of you ladies on the panel remember dealing with anxiety like this with your children in the past, and how you dealt with it or how you explained it to them? Did you?
Deborah?
Yes.
I remember 9/11 and all the anxiety that came. And at that time, I was working in the childcare industry, and just lots of anxiety. And the one thing that we learned at that time was that parents were watching the news 24/7, and children thought that the towers were being blown up over and over again because they couldn't think through and logically understand that, no, this is a story, and they're just repeating the story. So I think the same as today. I mean, we were just reminded, I work at the children's home now, and we were just reminded during storm season not to have in the cottages the TVs on all the time, and the children are watching and hearing, and some of the news guys get real excited about, the storm chasers get real excited, and then so it just causes panic in children. So, as we're coming out of the pandemic, right here at tornado season and other things, I think we just need to be careful in our homes how we handle technology, how we handle the TV and how we handle exposing our children, and that we ourselves, even though we might be anxious on the inside, try to model some coping skills and self-control. And so 9/11 was what came to my mind and what we learned from that about TV and exposure to the news.
Anyone else?
I remember Tiffany, my youngest daughter, when the very first Gulf War came along and she started hearing about us bombing things. And she went to bed one night and I could tell something was wrong. And she said, "Are they going to bomb us?" You know, and it never occurred to me, with it being so far away from us, that she thought about that. And I just tried to reassure her that, you know, that it was far away. But I guess my point is to try to always tell the truth, but to tell some good sides of the truth. And, you know, never tell them, "Oh, we're not in any danger," or anything, because we don't know that. And I didn't want to ever give them the idea that nothing bad was ever going to happen to them.
Right.
But that there was always good in every situation, and there was something that I could tell her that was reassuring. And I think by the time she went to sleep that night, she was better. And, you know, and I hope I handled it right. When I told Donia that I was taking Faye's place on here, I said, "I just don't feel like I'm the person to do that. I've made so many mistakes." She said, "They don't need anybody that thinks that they're perfect, Mom."
No.
But you know, I just think we've got to be careful not to tell them that everything's going to be okay, but to just reassure them with things that are the truth. And it never hurts to reassure them with some scripture either.
That's correct. I remember when the Gulf War started, Kenton and Cynde were very little. And living in Owasso, we live right by the airport and we live right by Air National Guard, you know, base. And at the same time that this was on the news, we could hear helicopters and fighters, you know, fighter planes going over all the time, just running routines while this was on the news. And my kids freaked out too, thinking, well, all these planes are going over. And we did the same thing. You know, I told them, no, they're not going to do it. And praying over it. I mean, prayer does amazing things. Miss Loffer, this is Carol Loffer.
I go back another generation before all of you, I believe, pretty much. But into my own childhood, I'm on the West Coast in the state of Oregon, and World War II is on. And I can remember the sirens going off and our family pulling black shades and being told to get under a kitchen table like that was going to really protect me. And now I've learned people even do tornado stuff like that, and I thought, tornadoes bother me worse than what that did. Yeah. But that was an experience for me as a child, was just being told get under a table. And I was smart enough at 6 to think, I don't think this helps. But anyway, through it all, that was my own. But in my own children, I don't think they didn't grow up having a fear like that, even though we lived on the farm, so we didn't hear the sirens in town. And maybe that caused them not to react to storms so much. And my husband would just watch for one, and he was not one to say, go to the cellar one time in our life, ever. So two, and that was it. He had to see one before he'd say go. So we just didn't run cellar. So we didn't grow up with that fear. So that's just a different experience on me.
Yeah. We had a question come in on Facebook. Were you getting ready to speak? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Yesterday, and that is, what do you do when your child lies? How do you train your child to not lie? This is mostly coming from kindergarten parents, because you know kindergartners, they like to lie because they learn how to lie. I have a grandson who's a kindergartner, and he's learned to lie, but he gets really upset when people lie to him. So what advice do you have on teaching children not to lie? Miss Carol's got something. Danya never lied?
If mine did,
Oh, she told somebody one time that Lando was going to have a baby when she wasn't.
I'm sure I had mine telling me stories that I fell for. That's probably what I did. And I think that's what happened in mine. And I wouldn't catch it till later. And then it was sometimes too late for much of a consequence. But the son that you guys know as Rev Kev,
Yes, Kevin Lawfer. Da, da, da.
he actually was a different personality as a little boy. So that you see this live wire, that was not who he was till he was about 16 years old. He decided to have fun. But if he told lies and things, he didn't really do them to mom and dad. I think he knew there was a consequence, and his grandparents or some of us would find it out. I didn't catch him in all that, but I know he's quite an exaggerator now.
No. Go on.
And I think our daughter probably told us some very often, and we did catch some of those, and we had to discipline some of that, and usually just taking away a privilege was a.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yes. Caitlin.
Okay, so I have 2 kids. This is about my daughter, Ella. She's 15 months old. So there's a part of me that's very happy they're so young during all of this because they don't really know what's going on. I mean, Miles picks up on a lot of just people's emotions around him. But he doesn't really know a stranger. He's very outgoing. He's a lot like his dad. Ella, she is very shy. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I was like painfully shy as a kid. God has helped me not be as shy over the years, but I still have to fight it sometimes. I'm like, 20 seconds. If you try it and you hate it, then sit back down. But so I want to like try to teach her to, but I think with everybody with masks and everything, it's been even harder for her because she is just so glued to me that it's just hard. Like just dropping her off for Sunday school. She still is not used to it. But she was born in last December. So we stayed home for a little while because, we like to stay home and it's flu-y anyway. And so then I think we were back to church maybe 2 weekends and then everything shut down. And so she was home me and Ella were home together for about 5 months. And so that's all she really knew, and she was even scared of her pawpaw for like a whole year. And so, I don't know. It may not be a big deal, but it's very disheartening because I'm like, this poor little girl, she's so shy already, and with even not being able to see everybody's face all the time, I don't know. I don't think it's helping, and it just makes me nervous, like, is she ever gonna be able to unattach from me, or, I don't know. Does anyone have advice on that?
I raised a very painfully shy daughter who is now a 40-year-old young woman with a child, married. And it was very hard watching her. Separation was always difficult. And this is probably one of the areas where, you talked about we did make some mistakes. I found myself trying to ease the pain and realized I was making it harder. Well, we finally had to get some counseling when she was in 6th grade and still having trouble separating at the classroom at school. But, we found out we were just making it hard because we were enabling her shyness. And so we started putting some boundaries on it. Now, your 15-month-old isn't quite ready for, but we had to start saying, if you can't walk up to the counter and ask for a refill on your Coke, then you won't have a refill on your Coke because you're obviously old enough to do that and we're not doing it for you. And that sounds very simple, but it was actually very hard because she was hurting so bad. So I just think that continue, Caitlin, to just pray about it and seek God and give her safe opportunities to be away from you, that you know that she is well loved and well cared for. And when you depart from her, just act like this is the most exciting thing. Talk to her the day before. Have pictures of her Sunday school teachers and talk about what a joyful experience it is. And then when you walk away, you may shed your tears. But so give her safe, comfortable experiences that you feel good about. And even as things open up, find that person who can give you some respite. What we're really doing is giving her an opportunity to be away from you for a little bit, and little bits at a time, and just grow her into that. But hopefully you won't be as enabling as I was. But but my daughter is a quite functioning young woman, like served on the chairman of the personnel committee at her church and, stuff like that. So they do survive. And I'll be praying for you because I know that hurt.
I was saying I tend to be helicopterish. I try not to be, but I just love my kids so much. And that was good advice, because I think when I do drop her off at places, I need to be more like, instead of, like, it's okay, and yeah. So that's that. Thank you. It's good advice.
One thing I always told mine, because even just about any kid goes through at least a little bit of that, is I would just assure them, I always come back. I always come back. And Kenton, when he was 2 and we had to switch babysitters, I would say, I always come back. And then he would go, you always come back, But it helped. And I mean, you're going to have to deal with a little bit of crying and all that. And there's always that one kid in the church nursery who cries. It just happens to be yours right now, and I'm sorry. But as soon as she stops, yeah, she's going to be an amazing singer. We're hitting those Mariah Carey notes. Yeah, she's going to have her range. It's going to be phenomenal. Yeah, we're talking the voice. Yeah, but as soon as she quits doing it, somebody else's kid's going to do it. And then you can just go, not me anymore. Yeah. This too shall pass. Anybody else in dealing with a very shy child? You were a shy child? I had, my children ran the gamut from extremely shy, Natalie, to not shy at all, Sydney. So I spent 5 years trying to save the world from Sydney, so she wasn't talking to everybody, and then saving Natalie from the world to keep people from talking to her. So I had to switch there a little bit. Anybody else have any questions out here before I start going to the ones? Is there something you would do differently as a parent if you were given a second chance? I'll start with mine. I would not be a yeller. I started out as a yeller because I kind of grew up in a family of yellers. And I heard myself one time. Somebody was videoing while I was screaming at a child, and that broke my heart. So I think that was it. But then it got to be funny because my kids, I could hear the bigs telling the littles upstairs, if she yells, it's no big deal, but if she talks really low like this, you better run. But I think that's my big thing, is I wouldn't be a yeller. Ladies, is there anything that you would change?
Okay, I'll talk. At first, when I saw that sample question, I thought, well, I'd probably do the same thing again because it's still me.
Yeah.
But I do think I would have stood my ground better. I'd start out sounding really tough. You can't do this. But one of my my daughter would always pay me lip service and agree. Okay, I won't do that, Mom. And then she'd go off and do it. My son would argue and give me a debate about why he should be able to do it. But Mom, I'd go, Tony, you're not going to get the last word. But he'd Mom, but he wanted my blessing. Uh-huh. And then he would usually, I could get him to accept my decision. But Michelle, I would think, she's easy. but I don't know. I don't know what I would have done differently. I'll maybe try to be a little tougher. And there were a few things I did, like you can't go see Dirty Dancing.
Uh-huh.
I don't care how you act or the fit you throw. I wasn't going to give into it. I made her throw away the Like a Virgin DVD, CD, whatever. I'm sure she never got a hold of one anywhere else, but
I threw away Insane Clown Posse,
you know,
but that is
you
warranted.
try, you
No one
just
should have
wanna
Insane
just
Clown
really
Posse.
hold your ground, but it's so hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard, but I don't know. You do the best you can. That's all you can do, and pray.
Yeah.
So.
You have another one? Okay.
Okay, we've tried. This is about my son. So Miles is very strong-willed. And a lot of people are like, well, that's going to be the second child. Well, it's not in our case. It's the first child. And I am very strong-willed. So I know where he gets that from. Being with the shy thing outside of the home, but in the home, it was like bucking back, like the debate thing. Well, Miles is such a sweetie, but he's the same way. He just gotten to the stage 2 days ago of why? And, but at the same time, he has like this lax side, like this lackadaisical kind of like, you know? And so when those two things meet and it's something I need him to do, it is very challenging to get him motivated and like get him up and to listen. And we've tried so many things. I mean, all kinds of ways to, you know, make cleaning fun, or, you know, he needs to try to help and learn, or timeout. I mean, but that has been very challenging for me. And if anyone has advice on a child that is strong-willed and will do great things, but also has this like, well, you know, I'll do it when I want to do it, you know. That'd be great, because he's only 3.5, but I told him the other day, you need to get up, help mommy clean, and he just stared at me like this, and I'm like, Miles, right now, obey right away, and he's just staring at, and I was like, what do I do right now? I don't want to like drag him off the couch, you know. I'm like, what do I do? So, any advice?
Ladies?
Sounds like a discipline question, doesn't it?
Uh-huh.
Does anyone do the spare the rod and spoil the child, or do they use the rod anymore? Is that even acceptable? It's in the Bible.
Yeah.
I want to say one thing I heard about discipline with the little ones. After I got saved, my son was 3 and my daughter was 8, and I learned that you shouldn't use your hand, because that's what you love them with and stroke them with, and so I also learned that you should use something other than your hand to when they disobey, if it feels like it's appropriate. And so I used my son's little leather belt. It was in the drawer, but it gave me time to go get the object. It could be like a spoon or whatever, some people, but and I didn't have to do it for very many times for my word to be enough, but I did go get that belt, and it gave me time to cool off. I was just doing it because I felt like my word's not working.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that sounds awful, but
We had a spoon.
yeah.
And I think I only had to use it once or twice. And
Yeah.
I'm talking one swat on the fanny.
Yeah.
And then I would carry said spoon in my purse. And I remember having Kenton in a cart. He was like 3 or 4 and being in Walmart. And he started being a toot. And I would just kind of slowly pull it. I would just show him the spoon.
Just threaten. They know
In
you
my
have
purse,
it.
and then he would go, "No, not the spoon," you know, as loud as he could in Walmart. But that's all it took.
I tried the cold shower thing too, with the temper tantrums.
Uh-huh.
I had heard about it from my girlfriend when I was a kid, and I thought her dad sounded like the meanest person in the world. But then I had a kid that was throwing fits, and it didn't really ever happen because it sounded really awful. I'm going to put you in the cold shower. Or also laying down on the floor and showing them how it looks.
Uh-huh. I've done that on fits.
I've done that too.
Where if they throw a fit, I throw a fit beside them, and they would just get up and look at me like
Show
I
'em
was
how stupid they look.
crazy. I can't do it now because I would break a hip, but this was when I was like your age, and it worked out very well. And as far as in some of the things I did, they're going to buck you. And it goes back to what Cynde said about consistency and routine. And it's like, you know what? It's after dinner. It's time to pick up the toys. And just say like one thing at a time. That's for all kids, not just developmentally delayed kids or autistic kids. You don't say, I need you to pick up those toys and then get your socks and then you need to go do that and then go take a bath. They don't hear anything when you say that. But if you say, I need you to pick up all the blue toys, they'll do that. Now I need you to pick up all the orange toys, or now I need you to do that. Sometimes that works if you do one thing at a time. So.
Yeah, and I think about, like when you pick up the toys, then we'll have a snack, or I think about, would you like to comb your hair before or after you get dressed? Preschoolers they want power, okay? So a couple of choices gives them the little bit of power they're looking for, and you win because you get what you want. I also think, a 3.5-year-old is, he's still really young, but he's starting to understand, to remember a little bit of time passage. So when he chooses not, I just wouldn't battle it. So when he doesn't pick up the toys and you end up picking them up, they're on a shelf, they're in timeout, and so tomorrow, you didn't clean them up, so mommy had to clean them up, so now they're in timeout. So tonight when we pick up the toys and you help me, because if they are your toys, they won't go to timeout, and then tomorrow the others can come out of timeout too. So, give him some choices when you can, and then also, when we finish this, we'll go outside to play. But if we don't finish it, we lost all our time to go outside, or we don't have time now for snack because we have to have a bath, so consequences really is what we're talking about, and natural consequences that fit that. There's a couple of great authors out there. Kevin Lehman's Have a New Kid by Friday. I used to give new moms there's a book he wrote on new moms, and I said, and in 2 years I'll give you the Have a New Kid by Friday, because by 2 we've messed them all up anyways. So, and he's all about just natural consequences, and so you're not going to get dressed. Well, I'm going to take you to church in your pajamas, and everybody's going to wonder why you're at church in your pajamas. Now, of course, we'd probably all laugh at him, and he'd think that was great, and no, he would want to wear his pajamas next Sunday. But, just some choices, and then toys can go to timeout. Some things we treat as a right that we should be treating as a privilege, and I know with one single mom I worked with over the phone issue, her daughter demanded her phone, and I said, you have to understand, you have a phone because you need to communicate with people. We do so much business on our phones anymore. I said, but that is not a privilege for your child. It is not her privilege to have your phone. So boundaries and choices and toys in timeout. My husband sacked up a bunch of toys one time because our sons didn't clean their room, and they were way old enough to have cleaned their room. And so they didn't miss those toys for like 3 months until my son wanted his roller skates, and he couldn't figure out where they were. My husband's like, they've been in the garage for 3 months. You obviously have too many things to play with, but we just sacked stuff up and took it away. We didn't throw it away or, trash it, but it's just choices.
Yes. Miss Mary, did you have something to say?
Well,
she's got a mic. You can share or switch.
When my kids were little, and two girls that were just 11 months apart in age, Irish twins, I think they're called. But any rate, the grandparents just kept them overloaded with toys, and it was a big problem. So I started, when the new toys would come in, they'd be all fascinated with the new toys. I'd go in with a big old box and box up the old toys and put them in the top of the closet. And pretty soon, the new toys had lost their luster. So they'd get put in a box and the old toys would come back down, and we'd keep rotating them until they, wore them out or outgrew them, one or the other, but that worked real well.
That's a great idea. Had another question about communication with your spouse. I think this is very key. Even when you have a 3.5-year-old who's being insolent, you have to work together. And I know one thing that Clay and I talked about early on was we were going to have a united front. So there were several times that a child did something, and we would just tell that child that they had to sit on the couch and we were going to go in the bedroom and have a meeting. And we would go in the bedroom and shut the door and have a meeting as to what the discipline or what was going to happen. And then we would come out and have a united front, because we didn't want mom said this, dad said that, we'll go ask your mom, we'll go ask your dad. And I think that's one of the best things we ever did as parents. What's funny is that was before we had cell phones. Then all of a sudden we have all these teenagers. We have 4 kids spread out over 13 years. And Clay would text me, so-and-so did this. What's your schedule like for the next 2 weeks? Should I just spank them, or do you have room for them to be grounded? And this is how, and I would be like, oh man, next 2 weeks are bad, just spank him. I mean, that's how we communicated. And he would go, okay, I'll do a really big talk, really, I'm very disappointed in you. Okay, that'll work. But the key is communication and a united front. Do y'all have any stories to that? You can't top that one? I just remember coming out and seeing this poor forlorn child, whichever one of the 4 it was, on the couch. It's like, oh, what have they decided? They were back there for 10 minutes. Do we have any other questions? Has anybody thought of anything in the audience? I've had several comments of people just talking about how their family has become much closer during the pandemic. Through all the rotten stuff, it's drawn us closer together. So, yes, Miss Kim. Miss Kim, how do you have a question? You have raised the world. You've raised like everyone's child. You're like the grand poobah.
Yes, but now I have my own. How do you deal with sibling rivalry? My kids are 25 months apart. I have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. And I don't know if they've spent too much time together with COVID, but my 6-year-old goes after my 8-year-old. And it's horrible. Like, she went to school and told her teacher, my brother was hitting me on the bus, and I told him to stop, and he just kept hitting me, and he wants to hurt me all the time. I told her, he's a bully. He's being a bully right now because you're running from him. Stand up to him, knock him on his butt, and he'll leave you alone. That's what you got to do. But she won't do it because that's her little brother. Rock in a hard place. So, do you have any advice on siblings?
I think she's going to get her belly full soon. And he's going to get taken down a notch. Yeah, while he's still littler than her. I don't know. My kids always fought with the one next to them in line. And I remember when Natalie was 7 and Sydney was 12, and Sydney was taller than me by the time she was 12, and they had gotten into it. Sydney could push her buttons. I had the outgoing one and the shy one. And Sydney came downstairs, taller than me, 12, bawling that Natalie was going to kill her in her sleep. And I said, she's not going to kill you in your sleep. She's 7 and she's tiny. And Sydney said, you didn't see her eyes. They're best friends now. They're 26 and 31, and they're best friends. But there's going to be some bloodshed. There just is. I haven't met very many people who have gotten along with their siblings growing up totally.
I don't have anything to compare it with my own kids, but when I was a kid, I was the oldest, and my sisters were had twin sisters. I was probably the one that instigated, just because I wanted to break them up. I wanted them to be on my team.
Yeah.
But I did it kind of, I just picked on one or the other just because I was bored, I think. I wanted to do it until my mother would say, "Stop it."
Yeah.
I don't know. I just can kind of remember just being kind of ornery that way, just because I wanted one of them to come and play with me, and my mother would say, "Kathy, if you had just, they were doing just fine till you came along."
Yeah.
I was like, well, that was the whole point, Mom. I didn't say that, but, but anyway, I don't know. They're probably just, it's just out of boredom or something, I think, sometimes. I think they just, that's just what I remember from my own childhood.
Yeah. I think it's something we all have to deal with, and it just has to work itself out. Sometimes I think it just eventually works itself out. I wish there was a way I could wave a wand and make it go away, because, oh man, I had like 19 years of it. Okay.
Okay. My question might be directed more toward Dr. Fuller, but in regard to COVID and coming out of the quarantine and having to be so cautious in public, as far as being outdoors and public playgrounds and shopping, going to the zoo, that type of thing, as a parent or grandparent, what should we be looking at, or what determination should we use as to when would be a good time to feel safe to have them back on, like, public playground equipment, that type thing? Or are there precautions we can be taking now and go ahead and start transitioning to being able to use those public facilities, but to keep the kids safe?
That is a really good question, and fortunately I've been kind of keeping up with that, partially for myself and for my patients. And we learn something new every day. It seems like every day you hear, oh, they said that this wasn't the case, but now it appears to be the case. And that's really confusing for a lot of people because science really is science. Having an opinion about science doesn't really make any sense, 2 and 2 are 4. However, we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. And so our answers are going to change over time because we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. But one thing that we have learned is that while we definitely want to wash our hands frequently, we want to disinfect things around us, transmission from objects to people have not been a tremendous source of infection. And so I would encourage to be able to get outside. I wouldn't worry about the playground equipment as long as they wash their hands fairly frequently, unless you've got a thumb sucker or a licker. I've got some lickers in my practice. They lick at everything, doorknobs, toilet seats. It's horrible. But anyway, with that one caveat, you don't have a thumb sucker or a licker, you're probably in pretty good shape. Outdoor activities I'm so excited that the weather's getting better because we can really encourage that. Outside, there's not the respiratory droplet transmission that we see inside. And we know that much better than we knew a year ago. If you think about this day a year ago, we knew it was respiratory spread. We knew how long the virus remained viable on different surfaces. Remember that? It's like, oh yes, and for plastic it's this long, and for concrete it's this long, and for cardboard it's this long. And I actually washed my groceries once. I didn't know. None of us knew. But now we know that that's not a huge source of infection, but we also understand that the biggest source of infection is person-to-person contact. And if we can stay out of that respiratory droplet distance, then we're probably a lot better off. It's people in close contact indoors particularly. We have to look at ventilation, of course. So I would feel pretty good about short trips outside, get them on the playground, wash their hands, carry your Clorox wipes for sure. But we can start to do some of those things without being terribly unsafe and also without worrying a lot. I have a daughter who has an autoimmune disease, and she takes a medicine that really puts her immune system in the toilet about every 2 weeks. And so getting out for her has been much more delayed than it would be another 21-year-old. She hasn't been anywhere. She hasn't done anything. I think she actually went shopping tonight with her boyfriend, so that's exciting. She's been very cautious herself, and so I'm certainly not saying throw caution to the wind, but we know some activities are safer than other activities.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think that you're talking about the 4-year-olds, but they know terms now that you never thought about, which is we always called it germy juice, in the class. They don't call it that. They call it exactly what it is because they've heard it so much, and they know about cleaning their desk, and I cannot keep enough wipes for them to get over and clean their desk off. And they need it. Yes, they do need it. But that's funny because they know a lot of more vocabulary than a lot of 4-year-olds know that did before last year.
It's Hanitizer. I learned that from a lot of 4-year-olds, and I still call it Hanitizer instead of hand sanitizer. Does anybody else have anything? Well, ladies, we were going to go to 8 o'clock, and we're almost at 8:15, so this has been great. I want to thank the ladies' ministry for bringing us all together tonight. I think this was very successful. We had a lot of online watchers. If you have any suggestions for things that you would like us to do in the future, hop on this Facebook Live that we have right now. It will remain on the central Facebook page, and give us suggestions. You can call Lori Gray, any of us, email me, and I'll send it to Lori. But thank you so much tonight, and thank you, ladies. We appreciate all the wisdom. And you can go to any of these ladies and ask them any questions. Well, we should just line you up every week, shouldn't we? They'll be like, I don't know. All these ladies are wonderful prayers, and I appreciate that. And that's the one thing we can always go to is praying over our kids. I think all of us have had crying, sleepless nights praying over one thing or another. And you know what? When you wake up in the morning, a lot of times God has solved it for you. I always pray, God, I have 15 reasons here or 15 things you can do on my list. He doesn't always do those things. He miraculously solves the problems of motherhood many times much smarter than I could have. Okay, all the times much smarter than I could have. So I would like to pray over you all right now, and then we'll close it for the evening. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for all these ladies, the ladies that are in-house and the ladies who are watching on Facebook, and all of our panel members and my friend Cynde and all of us, Lord. Just please strengthen us as moms. Help us to turn to you and to your word for advice. Renew us every day when we are worn out. Help us to be consistent, both in our love and in our discipline and in our teaching, just as you're consistent with us, Lord. Help us to show grace to other moms and to our kids, just as you show us grace every day. Lord, we love you, and we just thank you for loving us. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. I want to thank you all.